Okay, we'll see the recitations. If you have a copy, we will start on page number 10. And we'll say in Tibetan 2 times, and we'll say in English 1 time after the saying the prayer of the Tibetan. La ma la ya zon je wo san je la ya zon je wo che la ya zon je wo yin de la ya zon je wo la ma la ya zon je wo san je la ya zon je wo che la ya zon je wo yin de la wo san je je dan zo je jo nam la chang jo ba do dan ne ja zon je jin zon je ve co nam je do la ben je san je do bar jo san je je dan zo je jo nam la chang jo ba do dan ne ja zon je da ye jin zo je ve co nam je do la ben je san je do bar jo sim jen dam jen de wa jo da ben bar jo je sim jen tam jen du nga da du nga je je da war je je sim jen tam jen du nga me de wa dam ben da war je je sim jen tam je ni ran cha dan da ve da yu la ne war je ro je sim jen tam je de wa de ve je dan den bar je je sim jen tam je du nga je je dan da war je je sim jen tam je du nga me be de wa dan men da war sim jen tam je ni ran cha dan ni dan da da nyo la ne wa jo ro je o sa je bo je jo sha me do da re ro le je ni de jen ba de sang ye me de bo wa ye do go nan da jen la jo bar jo ye dang go ro ra na me da la ka me ya da ya me. In English, on page number 11, I take refuge in the Guru, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. From now until my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And by the merit created in this practice, may I attain the state of Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, Mount Meru, encircled by the four continents, surmounted by the sun and the moon, I visualize this Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy the pure land. Idang Guru Rana Mendala Kame Yada Yame. Yeah,
Come dona, abbiamo detto che la... Good morning to you all. Thank you very much for joining me on this morning's Dharma discussion. It's so wonderful and pleasant to see you all. And so what I'm going to do today is, as like we did before, I'm going to continue the general or the brief introduction to Buddhism. Last time we have talked about the importance of the Buddhist practice or notion and concepts of the three jewel or the developing the refugee mind in terms of taking the uh, refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We also talked about the Four Noble Truths. And at one point, I guess I mentioned about the two truths and the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. So today I'm going to focus on the topics, one of the very important Buddhist concepts or topics and the practice of truth, the two truths. It doesn't matter from which point of view, and you talked about the Buddhism as whole, and either you start with the discussions of or the ideas and practice of how to develop the refugee mind, or go for refuge in a Buddha Dharma Sangha, or to try to understand the entire structure or structural to develop the structural understanding of Buddhist ideas and practices and through the teachings of the Four Noble Truths, or and try to develop the Buddhist understanding and enhance the Buddhist practice to the understanding of law of causality or cause effect and the notions of the practice of cause effect. And whichever is going to pursuing or try to understand the Buddhism as whole, and it is clear and that all topic and basically fundamentally is about the issues of one way or another is about the issues of the two truths of Buddhist teaching. So again, if we want approach the Buddhist the framework of Buddhism and also the content of the entire Buddhist teaching, we know that throughout the 45 some years of the teaching career of the Buddha Shakyamuni, and he taught essentially and all his teaching in classified or categorized as the turning wheel of the Dharma of the three turning wheel, or Dharma teaching of the three turning wheels of Dharma. So within that category, we can say that the first turning wheel of Dharma is primarily based on the Four Noble Truths, which is the fundamental or the foundational the teachings of the entire Buddhist ideas and practice. And at the time of or in terms of categorization, and when Buddha turned the wheel of the second, the wheel of Dharma, and which is the turning wheel of the emptiness, the teachings of the emptiness origin and the phenomena, lack of the inherent nature, the teachings of that, and so everything fell in that category. That anything is about it, and that was the main focus was about the emptiness, and meaning that the phenomena is devoid of the inherent existence. And then lastly, and Buddha taught about the and as a clarification, and he taught he turned the wheel of the perfectly or the clearly distinguishing and the turning wheel of Dharma of the distinctions. And so by the sutra in Tibetan called the Dodi Bonje, so meaning that the great explanation of the sutra, or the intentions of the sutra. And so all those teachings are in essentially is based on the serve the one purpose of the one purpose that is lead to all the Buddhist the followers to understand the entire structure of the Buddhist teachings and the practices. So you look at that, those the content or the essence of the three turning wheel of the Dharma overall that the Buddha delivered or taught to his disciple, and you can clearly see from the sacred from the philosophical tendency or the interpretation of the ultimate meaning point of view, and or the school of philosophy. If you look at it, the whole thing, all the aspects of the entire three turning wheel of the Buddha Dharma, the contents of the three turning wheel of the Dharma. Yeah, from the school of philosophy, Buddhist school of philosophy point of view, you will see that whatever Buddha taught, um, and or can be considered as belong to the categorization of the first turning wheel of Dharma. That's the turning wheel of Dharma of the Four Noble Truths. And so that teaching essentially is belong to is being followed and or adopted by the Buddhist school of philosophy, and generally called the Sutrantika and Vapashika. And then whatever Buddha had taught during the second turning wheel of the Dharma, and so you can say the turning wheel of the Dharma of the phenomena devoid of inherent existence, or the turning wheel of Dharma of signlessness. So the turning wheel of Dharma of the signlessness, or character 3. So the contents or the essence of this teaching during in this category, the second turning wheel of the Dharma, and the whole idea is being adopted and practiced by the followers of the Madhyamika, the school of Madhyamika philosopher, or the practitioners who prefer the approach or the ideas of Madhyamika. And then when you look what the Buddha has taught during the third turning wheel of Dharma, or the contents of the third turning wheel of Dharma, and from the school of Buddhist philosophy point of view, you will see that the key or the essential the teachings of the third turning wheel of Dharma is adopted by the followers of Chittamatra or Yogacara school of philosophy. So whichever those four Buddhist schools, right? We know that Vipashika, Sutrantika, and Chittamatra, and Madhyamika. Those four schools of Buddhist school, Buddhist philosophy, and whichever consider what it is or isn't the essence of the true intentions of Buddha teaching or Buddha or not, and all of them are, and either they talk to emphasize the importance of understanding of the Four Noble Truths, or the karma, the cause effect. So all of them are, and basically, again, and can be understood through the teachings and the practice of truths.
このためですね、宗教が優秀で、そのためですね、ためですね、ことですね、で、ややね、こういうのすぐて、それに、이것이그사람들작을하나이렇게만들는작을만들는거까지되었으나로시아인이렇게 노조는다한번내려갔다는 시기가 있는 것다 지나마가 내려와지지 이렇게 다 가지고 너무 무섭게 해서 가지고 그래서 진짜로 다 가지고 이게 남자들 때는 아주 차오 음악이 다 가지고 너무 무섭게 되니까 super 차오 어디에
So from the knowledge point of view, what we need to know to bear in our mind is this. When Buddha taught about delivered the teachings, which is actually belong to the categorization of the first noble truth, or the first turning wheel of the Dharma, which essentially is all about the Four Noble Truths, that has been adopted by the Sutrantika and Vaibhashika schools of Buddhist philosophy, and which is from a school of philosophy point of view, and generally speaking, it's considered not as in terms of understanding of the ultimate the teaching or the meaning of the Buddha teaching or the intentions, the ultimate intention of Buddha is considered to be not the most profound, and which is, let's say, foundational or fundamental. And therefore, the school of philosopher from the Vaibhashika tradition and the Sutrantika tradition, their understanding of the Buddha's teaching and or understanding of the first turning wheel of the Buddha's teaching essentially is incomplete or not the perfect or not subtle. It's the kind of growth, not the most profound and the subtle. They didn't get the subtlety and of the Buddha teaching. And then when you compare the philosophers of the Sutrantika and the Vaibhashika and to the followers of the third turning wheel of the Dharma, that is the philosophers from the school of Yogacara, or mind-only school, the Chittamatra, mind-only school, in their understanding of the Buddha's teaching is compared to the first school of Buddhist philosophy and first two schools of Buddhist philosophy, the Vaibhashika, Sutrantika and Vaibhashika, is much more profound, much more deeper, and is closer to the perfection and the point of perfection. However, when you look at the contents of the second turning wheel of Dharma, that is the teachings of emptiness or teachings of the phenomena devoid of inherent existence, and compared to the followers of the school of Yogacara or the Chittamatra, mind-only school, into the Madhyamika or the school of the middle way philosopher, you will see that whatsoever is defined by and interpreted and by the philosophers and of the middle way school, the Madhyamika school, which is complete and profound, and again, in terms of understanding the ultimate intentions of Buddha teaching, and so the interpretation of the second followers of who follow the second turning wheel of Dharma, and is perfect. So now you might ask a question: how come these differences they raised caused these distinctions? These distinctions arise is because, and as followers of Buddha, we know that in terms of the capacity and individuality and the background and the temperaments and the interests and or is the levels of intellectual capability, and then it is a variety. It involves a great variety, and it's a variance. So in order to deal with this greater variance, and the divide and different the needs serve the different needs and meet each individual or each group individuals and the needs. So therefore, and the Buddha taught deliver the teachings very differently. So. Yes, but whichever, and a school of philosophy, and or how subtle they are, or how causal they are, and all kind of in between. And essentially, if you look at it again from the structural and or content point of view, and to pursuing the entire Buddhist teaching, you know that all those the school philosophers and philosophies and they so they are fundamentally, and then the way they approach Buddhist teaching is based on the understanding of the two truths, or they approach the Buddhist teaching, Buddha's teaching, and through this structural and teachings of the two truths.
他觉得这个毛是对这个是，他觉得你这个小孩子，你工作这个，工作这个是什么？这个是啥东西？那第二呢，この単語で実践がある、世界のワードの、要は実践があった、世界のワードで、ことについて、が、工場で出すと、時間の状況、大丈夫、よく考える。そういう社会の動き、工場でのですね。で、理解ですが、これは、現実、各地、저는 요새 그렇게 그런 책이 있었으니까 시험에서 그런 자체를 이해하고 저는 그런 분들이 이렇게 바꿔 주고 이미지 다음에 이제 근데 지금 있어요. 근데 이거 써야 돼. 그런 시바까지 전에 있어야 돼. 그 시바 뒤에 나오게 있어야 돼. 생각지 말고 생각지 쓰면서 그 지금 차수도 시험이 있어요. 네, 그런 거죠. 차 지금 시험이면 또 세례 시험이 상대적 포트는 거죠. 그 이미지 중에 우리 시험을 참여해서 그 지금 차수 주시는 저kuma da yawa da su cewa da mutum da can su da wuri su da yanzu ne wajen sojin can su da da tare da su ka tare tare su da can su ya ne da tare da can su ya ne su da ka su da kai wuri da ne wajen sojin can su da ne ji ba ku ne sai da ma su ne da da su ne
Now let's see what are the way how the first two schools of Buddhist philosophy they are interpreting or they are approach the entire teaching of the Buddha Dharma, and then through the structural the teachings of the two truths. Right? First of all, we know that two truths are referred to the conventional truth and the absolute truth or ultimate truth. Right? Those are the two truths. So now let's check it out to see how the Vipashika and Sutra Tika and the followers of those two schools of philosophy, they define the conventional truth. Right? The way and these two the basic sort of a Buddhist school philosophy and the way they interpret the conventional truth is different than the second and the third group of Buddhist schools, right? We're going to talk about later. So here is the example. So what if you approach a philosopher who follow the Sautrantika and the Vipassana school of Buddhist philosophy, if you ask them, what is conventional truth? And they might pick up a mala or prayer rosary, and they will point out and say, this is this is the conventional truth. If you ask, how common in this mala or prayer beads, right, rosary is called conventional truth. They say it is conventional truth because and essentially and so it is does not hold fundamentally and something is built in or the absolute something absolute sort of the inherent to it or intrinsically sort of the mala or the rosary on it. Why? Because, for example, if you try to kind of yeah to do cut off or slide and the rosary beads, right? And the kind of layer by layer, and you will see that. So, and they can clearly tell you. And although at the first glance it looks like it exists by itself, it's a kind of a hold some kind of a the individual or autonomous the identity. It's some kind of the identity with the building in and it exists by itself. But when you cut off or sort of layer by layer or and piece by piece, you try to cut, and then you can see that they cannot hold the mala, the rosary beads. They cannot hold that very first impression in terms of the identity which gave to you as it exists by itself or is on some kind of autonomous identity. So that clearly tells, and the mala is felt to the categorization of the conventional truth. And secondly, the second example, and we can think about is like the thoughts, okay? Like the thoughts, or let's say the feelings. Anything belongs to the sort of the belong to the phenomena of the mental phenomena, a mind itself, and so mind itself, and prior to analysis, it seems that the thoughts, the ideas, the feelings, and the sort of is operating under its own power, and but if you examine and try to challenge that very the sense of the mind or the entity, the identity of the mind, and or place that you are the basic or the sense of what the mind is, and from the time point of view, and from the perspective of time, and you place it and you put it as the thoughts into the sort of past, present, past moment, present moment, and future moment, and you will see clearly, and that the first impression of the mind or thoughts which you gain, and sort of is operating under its own power, immediately will fall apart. Why? Because the first moment of the thoughts, and by the time when you try to reach the second is already gone, become past, and similarly the second and the third is they are separately doesn't hold any autonomous or and they do not operating under sort of its own power at all, and so you can't really thoughts or the feelings or the mind, and does not own anything and themselves. So that clearly shows that mind in general is the conventional, is that something is conventional and or belongs to the categorization of conventional truth. Now, if you look at the or ask the philosophers of Siddhantika or Kaushika, and the question, what is or how you define the ultimate truth? Right? The answer would be, and they say, ultimate truth is something that you can rely on, and is reliable and verifiable, and is truly and sort of is true and unquestionably sort of exists by itself or under its own and sort of some kind of nature. Then you will ask them, give me an example, and they will say, yes, so look at the mind again, okay, and take the mind and say, yeah, even though the second, the first, and the third, and the mind has no absolute and built-in and qualities, but the the funnel or the finest or yes, the funnel or the sort of the dead end and the moment of exam, your examination of the nature of the mind. When you reach that point, you say, yes, the first moment of the thought is not is gone, and the second and the third is gone, and the third again evolve. You go like this, analyze this, you will reach the moment that you cannot apply any human intelligence, right? And to define anything, right? The thought itself is, so when you reach the last point, it's always being by itself. Right? It never changes, never goes, no matter from which an angle and how you approach the the entity, the nature of the entity of the thoughts, and you will reach the point where you cannot really analyze this, or you cannot go about the nature of the thoughts anymore. It just stops there. So that is called aspectless, right? The mind of aspectless, or the yeah, it's a thought or the mind and of aspectlessness. When you reach that very point of the aspectlessness of the thought of the mind, and you cannot go nowhere, and so all the methodology, you exhausted all your methodology, your the searching and ability is completely dead. So that confirms that the aspectlessness of the thought or the mind is the absolute truth. Okay? And then another example, the school of the philosophers of Vipachika and Sutrantika would give you and to confirm that the absolute truth or the ultimate truth is in today's point, today's modern science, we can say that some kind of particle and or the let's say the aspectlessness of the particles. Concerning the matter, the nature of the fundamental, the ultimate nature of the matter, and Vipachika say, yes, if you find any matter and any size or any quantity, and so now you go approach that very object, try to see how what is the nature of how it existed, and what is the ultimate nature of that very object, the matter, and is. And so your approach, your searching, your examination will lead you to the kind of fine and item and or fine and the particles and very fine and or the most subtle and or the subtlest the atoms and atoms and then autumn will lead you if you go again. So and furthermore, try to define that very subtlest, right? And or the most the fine the units of the particle, and then you will reach the point where you see you cannot apply any human intelligence anymore, and to pursuing that or their object. That aspect lessness of the atom or the particle, and is just state by itself, and it's operating under its own power. So that clearly confirms or shows that the aspectlessness of the atom or the particle is the examples of the perfect examples of ultimate truth. That's I might make a mistake. I think if I have said previously about the aspectlessness of and mind or the thoughts, and also aspectlessness of the atom or the particle. If I use the word, let me say, my translation suggests that the position of both Sutrantika and Apashika, then I was wrong. So, and what I have translated before, and that position is merely held by or asserted by the followers of Vapashika, not the Sutrantika. Right? Here, the Sutrantika, let's talk about the Sutrantika philosopher's position in terms of how they explain and the two truths, how they define the two truths. Okay? Well, here is the thing. So if you approach a philosopher and who propagates the Sutrantika philosophy, or try to explain to you from a Sutrantika philosophical point of view, and try to help you understand the entire Buddhist teaching, and through the concepts or teachings of true truths, here is what you would hear. First, if you ask a Socratic philosopher, say, what is ultimate truth in your school of philosophy, or what do you think? And you might hear this particular philosopher from this particular school of philosophy, Buddhist philosophy, would say the ultimate truth is something that the things, phenomena, or events, and including, for example, the mountains and house and the people so anything that's going on so can be identified through your senses, right? And unmistakably, and that is the ultimate truth. So in this sense, that the ultimate truth and or the phenomena exist, the inherent existence, and in the or phenomena ultimately existed, and or absolute phenomena that is absolute, absolutely existed. All of them are synonyms. And here let's explain. For example, and the Socratic philosopher would give you the example to try to help you understand their interpretation of ultimate truth. And they may point out a flower, a piece of flower to you. Okay? Let's say that flower's color is white, right? They will say, look, did you see can you see the flower? You will say, yes, I see. And he says, look at the color. What is the color? Is that white? You say, it is white. And so then they say, yes, you see, that is the ultimate truth. Why? Because the color of the shape, texture, and the color of the flower is independently and exists by itself. And the shape itself is independently existed and ultimately autonomously existed and ultimately existed, and it exists and its own characteristic. And similarly, the color of that white and also is autonomously existed, inherently existed, and it exists and by its own and independent independent character. So it doesn't require anything, and it's always been that way and exists and operating and unique, its own unique way. So that confirms that example for the flower, right? And the shape, and texture, and color, and it would clearly show that or indicates the flower itself and color and the shape is the great example of ultimate truth. Why? Because all the things happening, right? The texture, color, and the shape are operating and exist and from its own side and depend upon its own, and so its own unique way, right? Okay, now if ask, can you give me the example of what is the conventional truth? Right? Then, and the followers of Socratic philosopher would say anything, and then that's based upon and mental imputation, right? Or whichever you claim and or and you asserting and or before, and you try to make the case or build up some kind of the entity and establishment of and give to and any objects, and which if that is the mere result of the mental imputation or discursive thoughts, if that is depend upon because of discursive thoughts, or purely and as a mental imputation and or mental projection, and then that is the examples of can be seen as the example of a conventional truth. Why? Because it is anything that you say, you claimed, right, and you are asserting, but fundamentally is depend upon the notion, the idea, the concept, the merely is some kind of discursive thought. So therefore, it is not it is a conventional truth. And I can give you a more specific example. For instance, that even and somebody talks about, say, the India, right? And so now, and he will explain about the basic or general basic the phenomena or the characters and of the India, and by sort of narrating or through his or her own narrative, and they put everything about India in the words, and then and give it to you, all right? And then you, as a listener and or other part of the conversation and a person of the conversation, and you sort of develop the sense of a basic impression of what India look like. So that form of India, that very India that you know of, you have heard of, which is that belong to the categorization of conventional truth. Why? Because the very idea of India, or the knowledge of idea of India, your understanding of India fundamentally is merely sound, or it's a mere and sound generality. And so it's essentially there's no really anything is conceptually anything substantially there. And so, and another example about what is conventional truth, and from this particular school of philosophy, the Suprantika, and they would point out the sky and above, say, look at the sky, right? That is also the example of the conventional truth. Why? Because sky, by definition, and it's something just merely you superimpose. So you pointed, you posted, and a notion, and to something that's above you, and say the sky. But what really is sky is substantially, you cannot define anything or and to determine the based upon that very substantial entity. Say this is the sky. You cannot do that. And so a sky is the sky because of this discursive thought, or is the production of the superimposition.
Actually, also,现在的情况嘛，我们是有什么在当地我说就是很自由的，城市的我是城市，然后有去跟到这，你那里然后跟到这个呢，跟到这个就是有就是的，跟到这个就是的，我们这里跟到这个是的，有他都有他都我给你有必要的。Tapi orang di hijau belakang, ada belakang sini, oh jadi ijen belum ini, ada sebab kita kita ni kalau seperti, kalau sebab kita belakang sini, orang 이지도나 왕의 관계를 이해를 하더라도 순수적인 버티고 신 다섯 기는 서방의 신비 이익이 끊지라 다르게 불러본 것입니다. 그리고 우리의 한의 순수적인 버티기 세금이 끊지라 한의가 불러본 것입니다. 그리고 불러본 것입니다. 어쨌든 저희 관계를 불러본 그리고 불러본 것입니다. 이런 그래서 geral, temos outros valores, e tinha o que dizer, então, se não me dizer, se não me dizer, se não me dizer, então, todo o que 인기 수라서 남의 기도만 들어야 이게 좋아. 그래서 소치, 이 들러게 같은 소치, 이거. 제가 뭐도 비로도 시도를 듣기를 그런 인기 수작 방법이 이 기회를 가지고 생각을 가지고 하는 거예요. 또 언제보다 정말 되게 어떻게 되나 연구 내가 이거 뭐죠? 대면 시작 관계 내가 예를 들어 내가 그래서 말씀드리 우리가 세상에 모두들 세상에 좋게 되었으나 소리 이제 나와 되는 거야. 그런 한국 생기 어차 사실 뜻이 거예요. 또 한국 시력이 나와 그걸 이 수요가 있고 이런 생기 치기지 좋고 있어. 또 남들 있으면 어차피 저는 어떻게 되겠어요?
我想说，老公那个三张报纸真的是也是我怎么说，三张报纸如果然后永州然后到你那里不是咱们放了着，你永州这段咱们放了着，这是多了，说真的那个你做这个这意思嘛是，然后人呢。相应相应看评价呀okay okay so let me get give me a moment. I am the the worst translator ever in the world. I guess I have to find out one word one definition to make sure I translate it correctly. Okay all right. So now let's see, talk about what is the Yogacara school philosophy or the Chittamatra, the mind-only schools of philosophers, and how they define the two truths, right? And essentially, so the term mind-only school or the Chittamatra and propose or they basically asserting that the everything or anything and which is they belong to yes they divided all the phenomena and into the three what they call the three characters and so like the three characters and basically is about and let's say the phenomena that's the essentially the based on the imagination or image which technically of course you can say as the imputational or imputed the phenomena imputed phenomena or superimposed phenomena. And then that is the first character. So phenomena of phenomena which is the production of or a result of the superimposition and or mental imputation. That is the first the character and of the phenomena. And the second is the other powered phenomena. So, and or other powered character. Other powered character phenomenon and is the second in the category of the phenomena. And the third one is
It's 11 o'clock.
Perfected the phenomena. So all perfect phenomena, which means that it's a being and sort of perfecting and by its own and or in its own way and by itself, and so that's what is the third category of the phenomena. So those the notion of the three character or three essential categories on the nature. Some translations also say three natures of the phenomena. Whichever way, all right. Anything that can be defined or fell to the categorization of mental imputation or is a result of super the imputation or super the mental what's they called it? Yeah, the imputation and imputational and or is the mental sort of creation and due to the as a result of mental creation and that is the examples of the conventional truth. And similarly, other powered phenomena or phenomena which is dependent upon something else and do not exist. It does exist, but it does not exist under its own power. And so that phenomena and is also examples of the conventional truth, right? But anything from the ultimate nature point of view, when you're pursuing the any phenomena or things and events from the which is a result of the superimposition or the mental imputation. We look in the nature of itself, right? And that very nature, the ultimate nature, is the complete or the perfect the nature or all established nature, the nature of the all established nature or the characters of all established. Meaning that is the fundamental, is the essential, is the ultimate, the truth of the phenomena. Similarly, when you approach anything that's considered to be the powered phenomena, right, or phenomena, events which depend upon something else, it does exist, but and is it merely dependent upon something else? It's very conditioned, and if you look at and examine the nature, the essential nature of that very category, that thing or events, and then you end up to find the true nature of that very other power phenomena, and that whatever you find, right, you finally you find that you can you confirm, and that is the absolute the thing and or absolute nature of that very object that is considered the third the nature or all established nature or all perfect nature. And this is the examples of ultimate truth and asserted by the followers of mind school or the Chara school of Buddhist philosophy. And so here is the thing. When you look at in the whatever is asserted by the school of the philosophy, which is lower than the school of mind only or Chittamatra, and you will see their interpretation of the two truths, the truths of conventional truth and the truth of ultimate truth, are problematic, is incomplete, essentially is questionable. So therefore, from Chittamatra or the mind-only schools of philosophy point of view, they look at the whoever is asserting the ideas and based upon or according to the tenets of Sutrantika and Vipashika, and they will point out a lot of philosophical or theoretical mistakes. And so then they and then try to prove their philosophical presentation and genuine and absolute and perfect and complete, right? Well, same logic could be applied and can be applied to the schools of Chittamatra. Here is the story. When you look at the Chittamatra school of philosophy or their philosophical presentation, in terms of what is the true nature of the phenomena and or their definition of the conventional truth and ultimate truth, from a Madhyamika point of view, from the middle way philosophical point of view, and the middle way the followers of middle way philosopher Madhyamika, they would point out mistakes and by the misinterpretations of being made by the Chittamatra philosophers. So they would point out the contradictories and how the philosophers of the mind-only school will contradicted themselves or their interpretations is incomplete and can be considered mistaken. So therefore, from a middle way philosophy or Madhyamika school of philosophy point of view, and the Chittamatra or mind-only school's interpretation of the two truths, conventional truth and absolute truth, are is incomplete and is subject to interpretation, and so it requires and redefine. Requires the work of redefining. And so anyway, let's see here giving you, and of course, Madhyamika themselves ultimately consider their interpretations of the ultimate truth and conventional truth are the perfect, complete, and is false free or the mistaken free. And here, give you just a couple of words about the Chittamatra, right? Or mind-only school philosophy and their unique philosophical position in terms of explain how the things and events taking place and our experience of existence, right? And phenomena and ourselves and others. So the unique philosophy and understanding this. Essentially, they say, whatever you see, anything that is sort of separate from the viewer's point of view, right? Or you look at anything that from this dualistic perspective, right? Here is let's say the perceived and the perceiver, right? You look at that phenomenon from perceiver's point of view, and then define that is the perceived, the thing or event that is perceived, and by the perceiver, either is through the philosophical notion or through the mental sort of process, the mental understanding, or and the cognitive sort of learning process. We finally reach the point you say that they exist externally out there by self, and then Chittamatra would say you got that is the ultimate reality, that is the truth. Then the Chittamatra philosopher would laugh at you and say that you missed the whole point, you got everything wrong, you messed up. Why? They say that anything you see out there, in fact, is the manifestation of your mental appearance. In other words, so whatever you see externally out there is the impression of what appears in your mind. It's not out there by itself and as a separate object at all. So in other words, it's a dualistic view, or whenever you reach the conclusion through the process of a dualistic process of understanding, and that is completely wrong and is a mistake, is illusion. So yes, so whatever you see that they say that is due to the internal propensity, right? The manifestation of or the occurrence of your internal the mental propensity or the mental imprints. That is that internal the what do you call it, the internal to the core, the nuclear, like the entity within your mind, and that's technically called the capacity or the mental impression, the mental imprint. That is because of that, then you end up to see that very nuclear-like, let's say, capacity mental impression, and which project the things and events up there. Because of that, and it gives you the impression or put you under the impression that things are events objectively and or separately, externally out there. And so it's, then they say that is if you think whatever you see and that is true, then you miss the whole point. You fail to understand. In fact, whatever you haven't seen and you believe externally or existed separately as the objectively out there, which is fundamentally the manifestation of your mental capacity or imprint. 然后讲述呢，将来知道吗？I'm complained to this counselor that you were teaching today, and now I experience all my tongue almost broken into many pieces. You understand this impression, my feelings for it. When somebody say my tongue is almost broken into many pieces, right? Okay.
当然是这个人力或者反正我们的现在你看那个设计啊，那个单是很多，因为现在人力或者这个这个人，这样子所以呢，这个那个系统的流程，那当然有这个现实的可能有那就这样的有呢，那个就是大企业这样子。
Okay, I'm afraid due to time, and I have to end today's discussion here. And of course, our discussion on the Two Noble Truths is far being complete, and because we haven't talked about the two truths from the middle way school philosophy point of view or Madhyamika philosophy's point of view, and but we will continue in later on. And so now I would like to take a few moments and give it to you, and make a few moments and give it to you, and let's see if you have any questions or if you like me verify anything or clarify anything. Okay, yeah, Professor Victor from the JSA.
this has been a wonderful teaching, and so just a really a very wonderful thank you, Takashi Kyatso. The question that I have is, we've been speaking about the wisdom side, and each of the schools having a perspective of the view of conventional and ultimate reality. The question I have is whether each of the schools have different perspectives on maybe like the method side, so like the 6 perfections, or is that common across the different schools, practicing the 6 perfections, or do they all have different perspectives of what the perfections would be on the method side, which is something that we strive to practice for too? Thank you.
因为원지가 필요한 것들이 많다. 그렇습니다. 원지 전지 공학을 시작했어요. 내가 우리 시도도 먼저 시작했어요. 내가 우리 시작했고, 네, 내가 먼저 시작했어요. Quand moi, je vais dans une situation, moi, je vais c'est de possible de faire de quand le développement de c'est 이나요? 왕의 모토로 그렇지. 그만 대표로 지나면 시를 말씀드려. 아니고 그러니까 매일 학교원이 우리 원래는 맞춰 그렇지. 또 시를 말씀드리는데 이만 저 연구를 참여하고 이쪽 참여하고 이제 뭐 되는지 그다음에 벌써 한번 나올 때 각 유튜브에서 지나치게 저도 또 다시 두 번이 시를 말씀드리는 거죠.
Oh, that's a great question. I'm so pleased to hear and you point out the essence of today's discussion essentially is about to develop the wisdom or focus on the wisdom aspect of the teaching, meaning that try to develop a clear understanding. And it is what is said is essential. Yes, we are focused on the wisdom aspect of teaching. In fact, we try to understand or develop a clear view or understanding of the Buddhist teaching. You know, in this case, that the develop wisdom and is essential, and because without the wisdom or the knowledge or the clear understanding, and that can profoundly or thoroughly be able to distinguishing or determining the subtle things of each given phenomena, then you cannot really fully develop you cannot develop a complete a Buddhist understanding. So for this reason, it is very, very important and for us to focus on the philosophy or the teachings or the practice of the true truths. Yeah, it is absolutely worth it to put a time, energy, and make an effort to understand this the wisdom aspect of the teachings of true truths. Well, let me try to explain your question. I'll give you the answer to your question. We know that in Buddhism, generally speaking, has four Buddhist schools of philosophy, or by its essentially by its kind of contents of the teachings, right? Among those four Buddhist schools of philosophies, we know that the Sutrantika school of philosophy and Vipassana school of philosophy is considered to belong to the lower vehicle or the Hinayana school of philosophy. And then Madhyamika, the Chittamatra, the mind-only school of philosophy, and the Madhyamika school of philosophy, those two schools of philosophy belong to the great vehicle and the teachings of Buddhism. So, and these distinctions are quite important. Why? Because if you look at the interpretations or regarding the teachings and practice of the six great perfections, Prajna Paramita, you will see that the six Prajna Paramita, great perfections, is not being taught or deal and practiced by essentially by the followers of the two lower Buddhist schools of philosophy, meaning that the Sutrantika and the Vipassana. So if you approach the Sutrantika's literature and Vipassana, the Sutrantika's literature, you want to essentially find the teachings of six great perfections. And in other words, they fail to appreciate this aspect of Buddhist teaching, and they fail to attempt to establish the clear understanding of the six great perfections, teachings of the six great perfections. Right? And why? Because due to their understanding of the ultimate nature of the phenomenon, or the all that exists. And because the only Chittamatra, or mind-only school, and Madhyamika school, meaning that the Yogacara, not Yogacara, what you call it here, all of a sudden I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, the Prasangika Madhyamika and another Madhyamika school, I can't remember the Sanskrit name anyway. So those two Madhyamika school and plus the mind-only school of philosophy, they are the one and who be able to appreciate and also have the somehow that able to appreciate the ideas or teachings of the emptiness, or in other words, the emptiness of all phenomena, and so therefore they are in the possession to appreciate and practice the six great perfections. Having said that, we must bear in mind that in terms of understanding of and the practice of the six great perfections by those higher level, right, and the followers Mahayana practice, school of philosophy, and again, you can see the differences being made, especially in terms of the understanding or the practice of the last great perfection, the perfection of wisdom, right? And in other words, all those three the Mahayana school philosophy, the practitioners of the Yogacara school, mind-only school, and the Madhyamika school, the Pasankika school for philosophy, and that would almost come to my mouth. It doesn't. Okay. Anyway, so all of them are, and essentially and making no difference in terms of the five other great perfections, except for the last one, right? And they all appreciate it, and the teachings and practice of the great perfection of giving and the ethics and tolerance and joyful perseverance and meditation. And there's no almost there's no much there's no the distribution in terms of what is how to practice the great perfections of giving and ethics and tolerance, but they will disagree. Right? They will disagree with the last great perfection, the great perfection of the wisdom. That is because the great perfection of wisdom is involved a great deal of subtlety in common to what is the ultimate nature of any given phenomena, right? Here, if you ask the followers of Chittamatra, my own school, essentially it belongs to their practice of Mahayana teaching, but when you ask the most profound and subtle and questions of what is the ultimate nature of reality, and they would give the complete understanding or the interpretation about what is emptiness is. They would say emptiness is a phenomena that is devoid of the subjectivity and the objectivity. In other words, anything that's beyond the dualistic approach, or the things, events in terms of understanding the ultimate nature, if you be able to finally approach and objectively and so it's yes, beyond the demarcations of subject and object, then Chittamatra or mind-only school say that is the ultimate nature of the reality, and the mind or the knowledge or the view which understand, define this subtle point of the philosophical view regarding the ultimate nature of reality, and posted by the Chittamatra, and is disagreed by the other two followers of Madhyamika school. And so they would say, no, that is not the ultimate nature of reality, and but rather, for example, it's the school of the first Madhyamika, and they would say the ultimate nature of reality and is the phenomena that is devoid of self-character, and the ultimate nature of the phenomena, which is the empty of truly existence, and so and they would argue that is the ultimate nature of reality. Of course, when they say the ultimate reality is devoid of truly existence, and the phenomena established by its own character, which ultimately rejected the school of the school of Chittamatra's presentation regarding the ultimate reality. But here, when you go further, one step up to reach the highest, the supreme school of Mahayana Buddhism, that is the Pasangika Madhyamika, or the consequential school of Buddhist philosophy, and where they would say, and not only the phenomena and the definition of or understanding of ultimate nature that's asserted by the Chittamatra mind-only school is about wrong and incomplete, and so those the philosophers of the Madhyamika school, other than the Prasangika Madhyamika or consequential school, is all of them got wrong, because the supreme the highest Buddhist schools of philosophy, the Mahayana school of philosophy, Prasangika, would argue that the ultimate nature of phenomena is that all phenomena is devoid of or free of absence of inherent existence. Right? So this is the subtlety and subtle differences between the Mahayana school of philosophy with respect to their presentations of the ultimate nature of reality. Also, for this reason, and these school of philosophy are differ from each other. But again, let me tell you this one more time. And so they would not argue on that what is the importance of the first great perfection, like healing. Yes, it would say yes, healing is perfection is absolutely essential. But even they all agree, even great perfection and practice of great perfection is essentially is the great perfections of the internal quality, meaning that you perfected your sense of and also feeling internally or mentally, and you reach the point of the absolute free from the attachment, and that's uh, is the a point of a great perfection of feeling. So similarly, other four the great perfections, and they would agree with each other, but they only disagree when it comes to the discussions about how to define the ultimate nature of reality. Okay. Okay. So I think we reached the point of today's ending and how we've been scheduled. Let me stop it here. But I would do appreciate and encourage you. And of course, I regret that we'll give you the chance in case you have any questions regarding my today's comments. So please do take a notes and or remember your questions. And then we'll meet next time. And please bring and your question. I will be happy to answer.
Lo me ma re ye don do wa nam de ya ve wang bo da ju de ma zo ra gon do jang de yang je zhe ve je song dang de ren ba gong cang long je nian nian zhu de yang na nie je让业界人都别难解，学着自为张为他给，若为业界把世界，要为。安巴有让人知悉，但把人间秋叶马茶，茶将娘把知为秋叶。娘姐真不也让就把偏的的的萨瓦切瓦，世界呀为灭中天嘞。来着相助浪姐别唱，塔尔多南姐也拉巴的，亚维在巴中就。Lam sang de be tun jen du je ra jen se je me da me Zero Yahweh Mamba Nam Dong Nam Dong De Wer Ma Zhi Gang Zi De Ba Chu La Chu Zhi Zero Gong Zhong Ba Di Yi Tu De Nam Jie Da Du Zhu Jie Zha Xie Zhou Gong Jia Zhou Ru Jie Ba Bian Za Wei Lama Rinpo Jie Da Ge Nian Ge Ba Nian Den Shu La Ka Dian Jin Bo Gu Nian Gu Zong Du Jie Ngu Du Za Du Zu Chang Zhu Xin Zhu Rinpo Jie Ba Jie Ba Dong Jie Zhu Jie Jie Wa Nian Ba Me Par Yang Gong Nian Gong Du Be Wen Shu Kang Re Na Wei Gu Wei Ben Dong De Wa Ma Le Zhong Wei Nian Jie Bei Sen Wang Den Zhen Jiang Su Ye Xiang Bei Sen Jie Ba Du Jin Zhu Jie Jiang Ba Ba Wo Jie De Zang Bo Den Yang De Xin De Da Hun Jie Zhi Su Da Lu Jie De Wa De Da Dam Jie Da Du Ngo Du Song Xia Bei Jia Wa Dam Ngo Gang La Chou Du Nga Ba De Da Xin Ji Wei Za Wa De Gong Xiang Sang Bo Zhi Jie Ngo Wer Jie Pen De Zhong Nian Ben Ba Da Xiang Jie Den Zhen Jie Wo Tam Jin Gu Gang Zang Lu Jian Hong La De Jie Zhong Sang Jie Den Ba Da Du Jie Zhu Jie Cai La Gong Du Jia Wang Zong Ga Wei De Zhong Xian Nian Wu Zuo Zai Bei Ye Wei Nga Bei Long Sang Den Ni Ge Jie Zang Yang Do Ba Ma Zhu Jie
Okay, okay.